How you doing? I came from actually the Oakland Occupy where
I'm trying to other young. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually came from the
Okay.
Oakland Occupy where I went through tear gas, flash grenades, rubber bullets, bean bags, sound cannons, and concussion grenades. And I'd like to know what kind of health issues I may have in the future from either the tear gas or the two different types of grenades or the sound cannons.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things that we're seeing with the majority of troops returning from the theater in Iraq or Afghanistan is different aspects of PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder effects. I first started kind of thinking deeply about PTSD because I do stuff around violence in communities and violence in youth. But one of the statistics that I found quite disturbing, and then I'll bring it specifically back to the question, was that for a while, because a lot of these guys are actually died now, almost 80 or 85% of homeless men in the United States in a certain time frame were actually returning vets from the Vietnam War. And the majority of these men were suffering from different aspects of different, clinical ranges or comorbidities, to use an official term, of different consequences of post-traumatic stress disorder. I joke around and talk about this in my classes. It's the gift that keeps on giving. You can go through a traumatic experience immediately and survive it and think that, F you, I'm stronger than this, I'm just going to ignore it. But it can have, debilitating effects a lot of times for the rest of your life. A lot of studies have been shown that there's relationships between PTSD and folks becoming alcoholic, using drugs, or just anything to kind of medicate this sense of not feeling right or just feeling constantly hyper alert all the time or paranoid and so on and so forth. So it's definitely worth checking out because if you do, the sooner you can kind of diagnose that and get some type of treatment, the better, because otherwise it could maybe mess you up for a long time. I don't want to be pessimistic, but that's what the studies show. Yeah. Another question? See a hand, some hands over there. See some hands over there, Mike. Yeah. Hi.
I'm curious, I'm glad you showed the UC Davis video because obviously that brought a lot of attention to what happened and then there were repercussions as a result.
Sure, a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering with your background in media, how can we use media and how can we use social media and all these things even more effectively than what we're doing on Facebook today to police the police?
Right.
I mean, we're obviously not having our politicians do police, so what can we do even more so than what we're doing?
Yeah, I want to have a nice answer, but I really don't. But what I can say is that what I do find exciting about this whole movement, even though it's been accused of being very heterogeneous and random and kind of anarchistic and so on, is that a lot of folks have been very media savvy and they have been immediately reporting things and trying to get kind of global awareness about what is actually happening. And so that's exciting. The key though is what hits, right? And the other deeper question that I would ask, that I asked as a cultural studies professor, is thinking about the YouTube videos that go viral. Are they necessarily political? Usually not, right? They're usually, semi-sexual or stupid humors or, have really nothing to do with any kind of social issues. So I don't know what it would take for, social media to go viral so that it really captures kind of a huge upsurge of kind of outrage or some kind of upsurge of response. But I believe in, in creativity. People aren't just standing by and letting things happen and are using whatever technology is available to kind of document what they're living. So I don't know, it's yet to be determined. One thing I have read, I haven't really looked into determining its veracity or not, but I've heard it from different sources, that Facebook is good, but it isn't that good in the sense that who surveys the Facebook, right? I mean, who polices Facebook? and Facebook immediately releases any kind of information about its participants to law enforcement agencies and things like that. So I haven't determined the veracity, but I've heard it from enough places to say, you know, is there another way to do social media that really would be free? But I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, unless you have some suggestions or things that you like or have seen that you've been excited about.
I think we have time for about 1 or 2 more questions if we're going to stay on schedule.
Yeah, just an observation that you brought some very powerful images here for us to look at, and it reminds me that James Joyce said that one of the definitions of pornography is anything that increases desire. And so when I look at these and I think, what is it that the ultra-rich 1% are actually getting off on? Because, you know, here are people being crushed and trampled, and so it's the crushing and trampling of other people in order to get to that upper level that they
Right.
need to. Right. And it's really a sick kind of fulfillment here that you're kind of portraying for us. Thank you.
Right, thank you. There's some over there, Mike, maybe? Let's have them.
What are the legality aspects of using the tear gas and the concussion grenades and the sound cannons? Do you know the legalities?
No, but folks should know that. Sometimes when I do kind of youth activism work, for example, a couple summers back, there was just this message that was going out to certain neighborhoods in California that doesn't matter if you're an athlete, valedictorian on the way to work, on the way to school, if you're in South Central and Watts, if you get pulled over, just immediately throw your keys out the car, put your hands up, and just comply with whatever the officer asks you to do, because families were kind of tired of seeing their children get caught up in issues of police brutality and blamed for provoking that brutality or even shot. So I just mentioned that because I do think that one thing that would be extremely useful for folks involved in any way with the Occupy stuff is to be really clear on what your rights or what our rights are and what is illegal and what isn't legal. I mean, one of the really huge things, I guess, hopeful things, or one of the things I think that we can all hopefully agree to fight for, whether we're activists or academics or both, or just regular tax-paying citizens or even non-citizens, is the rule of law. I think if people were really serious about the rule of law, that no one's above the rule of law, and a law is broken and there's consequences, it doesn't matter if you're, you know, the Vice President of the United States or whatever, then that could, to me, that could be exciting, because applying the rule of law to this financial meltdown, and I wish I want to talk to some economists or some financial legal victim. We can really talk this through in a systematic way. But, you know, what laws have been broken? Literally, and I bet you there's been much, and in which case, if the rule of law is truly in place, what are the consequences? So.
Thank you, Dr. Aldama.